Hi guys, I am here with a true story. This one is by Linda O'Connell, and it is called A Belated Goodbye. I was the first grandchild in the family, and Pappy was my best friend. When I was a baby, he would ride the streetcar to my parents' home to pick me up on Friday nights after we got off work. Then he would take me back home on Sunday afternoons. Pappy and Grandma were so attached to me that Grandma insisted Pappy build a place at the rear of their property for my family to live in. When I was 3, we moved in. I was thrilled to be so close to my grandparents. As a preschooler, I would sit on the front porch with Pappy, waiting for the milk delivery. I'd watch and listen in amazement as he drummed his fingers on the wooden rail. "The horses are coming, you hear them?" I was fascinated with his ability to replicate the sound of the milkman clumping by with his horse-drawn wagon filled with glass bottles. Often, Pappy would take me by the hand, and we'd walk slowly to the corner market. He was so proud of me, as I was of him. On my 5th birthday, I walked down the ribbon of concrete walkway that led to my grandparents' house. I entered their house quietly, surprising them. Grandma reminded Pappy that it was my special day. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of pennies. He counted 5 into my upturned palm. "What's the matter with you?" Grandma reprimanded. "This is your granddaughter. What do you mean by giving her only 5 pennies?" My Italian grandfather looked shocked and explained, "1 penny for each year." "Nonsense," my German grandma bellowed. "You give her more than 5 cents." Pappy dumped all of his pennies into my hand. My chubby fist overflowed with the happiness in my heart. I ran back to our house to show my mom what Pappy had given me. I laid my coins on the nightstand, and Mom said it was bedtime soon. My younger brother and I slept in our own beds in our parents' bedroom. That night we were sleeping soundly when the room was illuminated with a blinding flash of light that woke all of us. "What time is it?" Mom asked. 3 o'clock, Dad said, looking at the loudly ticking alarm clock. Suddenly a picture fell off the wall behind my parents' bed, and the glass in the frame broke. Dad said in a hushed tone, "Someone close to us has died." "Aw, you're crazy and superstitious," my mom said. "It was probably lightning." "The weather is calm outside," my dad replied, as he moved the bed and helped her sweep up the shards of glass. "You mark my words. God sends us warnings sometimes. The good Lord is capable of miracles." His voice sounded mysterious. I agreed with Dad. I had been going to Sunday school every week, and I had learned about the fish and loaves and the parting of the Red Sea. Maybe a miracle had happened. We all settled back down and went to sleep. Just as dawn was breaking, we were awakened by a knock on the door. Mom's sister told us the bad news. Pappy had died during the night. I reached for my pile of pennies. My heart was broken, but I was 5 and not fully aware of what was going on. The day of the funeral, my brother and I played with our cousins in the funeral parlor. To be honest, despite my aunts and grandma weeping, I felt like we were at a party. I chased my brother and bumped into an antique brass pole lamp with a gorgeous glass globe. It crashed to the floor, and the ruby shade broke into a million pieces. My embarrassed and angry mother scrunched up her face and chased us down. With my brother in one hand and me in the other, she parked us in the pew with our father. I sat as quietly as I could, my feet dangling, my body wanting to go up front and look into the casket. I wanted to see Pappy asleep with Jesus. When the ushers released visitors in each pew for an organized viewing, I waited anxiously for my turn. "No, you sit right there and be still," Dad said. My parents were in cahoots, and all I could do was stand on tippy toes and clutch the pew in front of me, hoping to stretch high enough to see inside the casket. I was unable to, and I desperately needed to see my pappy. I began to sniffle and cry, embarrassing my parents again. Mom, who sat up front with Grandma and 5 siblings, glared a warning look at me. I sat back down. When my dad rose to his feet, he ordered my brother and me to remain seated. I whined and wailed, "I want to go with you. I want to see Pappy too. It's not fair." "No, sit down. I'll be right back," he commanded. I wanted my mom, but she was too far away. "Daddy, please hold me up. I want to see Pappy." He lifted me briefly, and then he sat me down with a warning not to move a muscle. I had only been able to get a glimpse, which only made me want to see more. I had to go see Pappy. Just as my heart was thumping and my mind was racing with my bright idea of running down the aisle, Dad returned and scooted me way down the pew next to my brother. I tried to communicate with Pappy. Somehow in my child's mind, without speaking aloud, I told him that I loved him. I begged him to let me see him. I told him my parents wouldn't let me come up front. Silent tears flowed and sobs raked my little body. I was not as sad as I was angry at my inability to have any control. The reverend of our church, he was a pastor, a very kind man, nodded in my direction before commencing the sermon. It was a warning that children should be seen and not heard. I listened to the sermon, the nice words about my grandfather, the mention of family names, but my eyes were on the casket with the lid still open. "Pappy, I love you." My lips were sealed, but I was shouting within. The sermon ended, an organ chimed. The scent of funeral flowers and ladies' cologne filled the chapel. Women wearing veiled hats began to shift in their seats and gather their belongings. I kept my eyes trained on that open casket until the last person went by. At the moment I gasped. A miracle was happening before my very eyes. Stunned and speechless, I watched Pappy sit up in his silk-lined coffin. He turned his head to the right, and he looked directly at me in the pew. "Goodbye, my little Linda. I love you too," he said. I could see him without even standing on tiptoe. I remained seated, my eyes focused on him. He smiled a smile that had a brilliance of 1,000,000 birthday candles. Then he laid back down, and the funeral director closed the lid. My heart overflowed with satisfaction and confusion. The rest of the day was a blur. I kept my secret to myself, and my mind's eye kept revisiting the images of what I had experienced. My daddy was right. The good Lord had just performed a miracle, and I was a witness. Years later, when I told my parents how Pappy had told me goodbye, they laughed and said, "Impossible." They told me it was my imagination running wild. They acknowledged that I had been a bright and active child with a good vocabulary. I told Grandma, but she chuckled too and said, "Wishful thinking." For years I could not come up with a logical explanation, and I was unable to convince others of what I had witnessed. School friends laughed at me, so I kept the images in my heart and always at the back of my mind. When I became an adult and shared my miraculous experiences with friends, they told me I must have had a vivid dream. Nobody believes you unless they see it for themselves, trust me. I smiled and nodded, knowing full well that I knew the difference between a vivid dream and what I had experienced. I've had those scary chase dreams that were so real I woke up breathless and unable to scream. What happened to me was real. It was not a dream. I don't share this story with others anymore, unless I know they are believers in the gifts God dispenses to even the youngest of his believers. I don't question how it happened. I just know that on a June day in the mid-1950s, It happened for me. Nobody ever believes you when you tell them that you've seen something, unless they see it for themselves. They just laugh at you or think you're crazy. And never tell your doctor if you see something and you tell your doctor you've seen it, because they'll think you're crazy and want to put you on crazy medicine or send you away too. Nobody ever believes you. They'll think you're psychotic or something. So you usually always just got to keep it to yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed the story, and I hope you have a wonderful day.